Recap time. Bought a jerry can. Discovered it lit up. Got some electronics, tools, made a circuit. Jerry can wall fell on me. Built a better wall. Lit it up with lights. Visited some programmers. Bought 200 more jerry cans. Had a glue gun party. Built some dodgy electronics. And made a giant wall that I introduced to a small dog and some partygoers. Shoved it all into a small van. And now that brings us to the present day. Welcome! I'm going to tell you today about a festival I went to called Electromagnetic Field, which was still under construction when I arrived. The festival was, like many, sponsored by Mud. Fortunately, it wasn't too bad. Whew. They gave me the bar area to try out my project. It wasn't exactly the most smooth bit of floor that I was provided, but that's okay. I had a wonderful construction crew who were incredibly helpful. Thank you very much, the three of you. I do not know what I would have done without you. That was a lot of cans to carry. We then had a meeting to discuss how to mount all of the jerry cans to the wall. I'd gone through a few designs over time. I'd considered a big net to stop everything falling forward. I'd considered bolting everything with zip ties to 10 scaffolding bars so they would hang from beneath. And I considered a wooden wall that they were going to make me out of some huge wooden panels, and I would just ram a bolt or a screw all the way through each jerry can, ruining it so that it was stuck in place. Went through a few ideas, but in the end we found the best one would be made of a sandwich. Sandwich method consisted of a wooden board held very level with a spirit level. This is how you found the straight ground in an environment of no straight ground. The whole site was all on hills and such. You then took your jerry cans and placed them on top of the wooden board. Once you then had another wooden board on top, that meant the jerry cans were sandwiched between two boards, squished. And that meant they were a lot more solid. However, we then strengthened them using glue and tape. What we did was took a small piece of gaffer tape, proper gaffer tape, decent stage gaffer tape, and rolled it up into these little sausages that you see here. What you would then do is take one of the sausages and put it on top of the jerry can, like so. We actually used 2 on the top and 1 on each side. That meant the jerry can was a little bit stuck between its neighbours. Don't forget, the tape didn't need to hold the weight of the wall. The tape just needed to stop the jerry can from sliding forwards or back. They would be sandwiched from above and below with these strong wooden boards. Additionally, for some extra stability, I actually took the top wooden board and stuck a screw through into this here hole. That would stop the wall falling forwards or backwards. A little bit of extra stability. Thank you very much. I think that was a rather sensible plan. While my new best friends were busy assembling the wood, chopping the various pieces and bolting them in place, I mounted this circuitry that you know and love underneath the bar with zip ties to stop it sitting in a puddle because it had been raining a lot that week. You can see here there's a bottom wooden board bolted to 3 of the marquee's vertical uprights. We made 3 towers of 10 jerry cans each because that's how many tall it was going to be, held in place temporarily with some thin pallet wrap. This meant that we could climb the ladder with the top shelf and would have something solid to put the top shelf on while we bolted the top shelf in place. Here's my friend climbing the ladder here, and that is just before we put it in, and the top piece now goes on. That was actually really stable already. Now we just had to fill in the gaps with the next 190 jerry cans, making a total of 210. I did have a little panic at one point where someone borrowed 4 or 5 of them to fill up an exhibit with water, but they were lovely people and they brought them back. Thank you very much. I got some assistance from some volunteers because what you're seeing now is a clip of, this was about 11 o'clock at night and I didn't finish that day till about 2 o'clock in the morning. we were just putting these jerry cans in place again and again and again, making all these duct tape sausages to squish them in place. It actually went in quite well. You may think that getting the last jerry can into a gap was difficult, but they had some flex. They had some flex in them. They would bend. While we were building them, we used this wonderful aluminium tape that was particularly strong and also incredibly sticky to attach the LED tape to the back. What you're seeing here is me climbing the ladder until who knows what o'clock in the morning, taping all of the LEDs on. We tried to make sure that they were always in exactly the same place for each row. I wanted calibration to be as easy as possible. I wanted, ideally, to calibrate just 2 lines and then copy and paste them. Next, I was able to get the computer system connected up to the internet. Now, due to the brilliant fact that this was a very techie festival, every single computer system and device on the network was given an internet-facing IP address, and the firewall was completely configurable by the network team. So, after a little bit of jiggery-pokery, if I'm honest, hardly any jiggery-pokery, the system went online and could be controlled by some of the programmers from Hampshire while I was in Herefordshire. So I could continue installing while they were doing the programming. But first, there was a boring test sequence running of red, green, blue, because this was actually the first time that I'd got all of the LEDs turned on. Because, I had so many, I didn't test them. I bought some spare sets, though. I'm not completely reckless. But this was the first time it had all been turned on, and I confirmed everything was working as expected. And then began the thrilling calibration process. So you see me wandering around with my laptop, doing LED after LED after LED, setting up each one of the 1,000 channels, making sure they coincided correctly. And that all worked well. And then around now, my friends arrived to help me tweak the code, make sure everything worked as expected, which was wonderful. And that is the last one. So before I show you everything working flawlessly, I'm going to show you a few things that went wrong. Voltage drop. Voltage drop was most certainly a problem. You can see 2 rows there looking a bit brown that really shouldn't be brown. And that's because they weren't getting enough power, weren't getting enough current. So I had to run in a few extra power cables from the power supply. Easy peasy. That's all they needed, and it sorted the problem out straight away. So next, due to this annoying pole, I couldn't get behind the installation. This actually kept me worried for a while, but in the end it was no problem. You just had to build the whole thing from the front, and it was very limited to how much you could get behind it. There was only about that much space, enough to squeeze in, so you could occasionally fix the tape on something, because some of the tape did come loose over the course of the weekend. There were 210 barrels worth of tape after all. But one thing I would say is all of the LED tape was attached with the aluminium foil, and all of the barrels had at least about 5 bits of duct tape sausages, which we had to make by hand. So at the end of it, our fingers were raw because it was just taking little bits of skin off if you weren't careful. So moisturizer is highly recommended. Finally, the marquee that we had installed against, the marquee flapped in the wind because it could get quite windy. So I had to go outside and with a ratchet strap attach it to the marquee and attach it to a big stake in the ground to stop it flapping. And I checked a few times every day during the course of the festival to see if being beaten from behind on this wall was causing it to fall over. It wasn't. It was all fine. It bowed out a tiny bit in a few places, which I fixed up straight away just by prodding at it. So that sorted it all out.
And we've just got the system alive for the first time.
So here it is working. We were running some test scripts for a little bit. This is it showing we love EMF. The heart was the only emoji that I got around to drawing, and it was used extensively. Occasionally, we would put on the soundbar, which was wonderful. We had a microphone hooked up, and we would play one of my favorite features, which was the graphic equalizer with all the spectrum analyzer graphic. Annoyingly, Of all the tents to get set up in, of all the tents we had to choose from, we were set up in the one with no music. Oh well. It still went down really well when it was switched on. The rest of it was all Discord. So if you wanted to talk to the system, to the JerryCanvas system, you would scan one of many QR codes set up around the bar, you would be invited to this Discord server, and you could ask it for help, you could scroll through what previous people had done, you could send your messages to it, you could request it enter certain modes. It was all completely configurable from Discord, and we got over 150 people connecting to it, sending their messages during the course of the festival. And that was really satisfying, and we really loved that. So the system followed a standard cycle. Firstly, it would be the clock for 1 minute. Then after that, it would be whatever text was in its queue. First in one colour, then in another, then in another. So you'd see your message 3 times, just to make sure if you wanted a photograph you could get one. And then after the 3 colour combinations, it would then enter a nice pretty scrolling colour pattern. And then it would go back to the next text in the queue. Now those were the 4 steps. If there was nothing in the queue at all, it would say "We love EMF" and give you some instructions on how to interact with the system. You can see at the end here an annoying problem that we had with the clock. The far right hand column and some of the bottom 2 rows didn't clear properly from the previous screen of all white. We did fix that problem, but kind of right at the end. So anyone thinking about doing an installation like this themselves, or some fun art installation of your own, I definitely recommend it because it's tremendous fun. Here are some lessons that I would take away. Firstly, always keep lots of tape on you, or zip ties. They're very, very handy, and a pair of cable cutters, always useful. Bring spares. I'm lucky all that LED tape worked. I did have some spare ones if I needed it, but I should have tested them first. But if a power supply had gone, I had a spare. If the breaker had gone, I had a spare. I had plenty of spare cable. I had a spare Raspberry Pi, spare SD cards, or micro SD cards for the Raspberry Pi. I had spares of everything, because if something broke, that would have ruined it. Get help from experts. If there's people who really know their stuff who are offering to help you, get help from experts. It's amazing what you learn. It's wonderful. Additionally, get help from anyone who's willing to lend a hand, because I had help with people footing the ladder, finding me a ladder, helping me make these little duct tape sausages, helping me to bring things, to pass me things while I was at the top of a ladder. Just all these little bits of help really make you feel like you're less on your own. So always recommended to get some help. If you're going to be attending a festival as well as running an installation, don't assume you're going to have lots of time to fix bugs with your installation. Get it as good as you can before the event. Because I found there were a couple of little bugs that needed fixing, like the calibration needed a couple of tweaks on it. But I wanted to enjoy the festival. I wasn't there for one of my... Always silence your phone when recording YouTube videos. Yes, I wanted to enjoy the festival. I wanted to have fun, so I wasn't going to spend too much time continually troubleshooting everything. Next, festivals are generally big, and your installations are often far away from wherever it is you've parked. So if you just need to grab a tool, it could be half a mile away, and that's half an hour of your time gone. So I understand why people have those little trolleys, and especially people who are constructing stuff take those little handheld trolleys full of stuff all the way around the site with them, and it saves you a lot of time. That's recommended. Additionally, make sure you got communication with whoever sets up the event, because I found ladders were really hard to get hold of, and that stalled everything. If your project is big and you will not see it in action, build a test rig if you can, build a simulator if you can. Try it on a small scale if you can. It makes things so much easier to troubleshoot and develop for. With us, the simulator allowed a lot of different people to help out with the project. If you can, build yourself a proof of concept. iron out any little wrinkles you can as soon as you can. And finally, just so you don't end up like me, try and figure out where to store all the stuff after the festival, otherwise your house ends up a nightmare land. Dismantling everything. That was actually reasonably easy, although sad. What we did was we got on the ladder and we disconnected the connections so each row wasn't connected to the next row. And once we disconnected everything, we went up on the ladder, removed all the screws that were holding the barrels in place, and pushed the barrels forward as much as we could safely do. And I had someone supporting one side, I was supporting the other side, and just gradually pushed it forward. Plop.
That's it. Okay, we are ready. Good, out of the way. 3, 2, 1, go. Yes!
And it landed flat on its face. And that meant we could dismantle all of the LED tape and all of the electrical connections and untape everything on ground level. Which meant instead of taking a day to build, it took 25 minutes to dismantle everything. Again, we got help from a person for all of this. I got help from 2 people for all of this. It was wonderful. It was a little bit sad to pack everything away at the end. If you do get your chance at an event like this, while you're packing away, if you have a checklist to make sure you've got everything, that is helpful. If you can pack it away neatly during takedown, that makes it a lot easier for the next time. A lot of times at events like this, you can be tempted to just hurriedly shove everything in boxes, but that makes it a nightmare for the next event. If you can take it down neatly, do. Well, this has been 2 or 3 months of my life now, and it's all over. The jerry cans are safely stashed in every corner of the house. The circuitry's sitting in a box waiting for its next adventure, and I've reached out to a few other festivals to see if they'd like to see anything like this in action. I do have a few ideas for future versions. I'm thinking of constructing quite a few 4x4 grids of them so that we can hang them up in trees, putting some metal framing or wooden framing around them to make them far more transportable and sturdy. This was perfect for an event like the one I went to, which was a bit of a hacker camp. And they're cool with stuff like this, but I wouldn't take something like this to Glastonbury, where someone would just throw something at it potentially, or you'd get a drunken person crashing into it. I wasn't concerned about any of that at EMF. So if I wanted a version 2, there are a few things I would do differently to improve stability. I would make it so it could be mounted far, far out of reach. I would have quite a few separate JerryCanvas boards and go with the psychedelic funky colours instead of a text generator. The text generation did get a lot of engagement, but not as much as I would have hoped. If I'd have put a little games console handheld thing in front of it, that probably would have got more interaction if I'd have got the game of Snake working in the end. So there are a few lessons to be learned here that I will try and put right if I'm invited back to the festival. I now know how to build everything. I've got all the parts I require. If there's any questions you have about this whole project, anything you'd like to know, any source code you'd like to see maybe, let me know and I'll see if there's any questions that I can answer. I'm also more than happy to do follow-up videos on any specific individual parts. You'll notice that this video has not been particularly tech heavy. That's because I didn't want to blind everyone with the tech. I thought you'd just like to see some fun videos of it operating. So, that is that. Next videos should be coming up will be some other bizarre little project I've worked on. Please do subscribe and hit the thing and press the button, blah, 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 blah. Thank you very much for the love and the hugs, etc. Have a very lovely one.
These go in one of the boxes.